Okay, welcome everybody to today's Legally Speaking podcast live. I'm proudly sponsored by Clio, and today we're diving into one of the most important shifts in the legal industry, the transformation of dispute resolution. For decades, many of you know litigation has been synonymous with very long timelines, super high costs, and unnecessary complexity. But what if technology could make it faster, fairer, and dare I say it, more human? My guest today is dedicated his career to answering that very question. So I'm joined by the brilliant Collin Williams, who's the founder and chairman of the new Era ADR, a groundbreaking platform using technology to make litigation and dispute resolution less painful, less expensive, and more accessible. Collin is an experienced attorney himself and has a wealth of experience in this space, and also an advocate for mental health and innovation in the law. So a very warm welcome to the show, Collin.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. That's a way too nice of an intro for me, but I really appreciate it. It makes me sound way more important than I am.
Well, it's all verifiable, and because we're in the legal spaces, it's all factually true, and it's just a real pleasure. I know we've spoken offline before putting today's discussion together, but I'm really keen to dive into this because it's a really important point. So let's go straight to the breaking point, actually rethinking the litigation model. What was the pivotal moment that made you realize that traditional litigation models were broken, and how did it shape your journey into legal tech?
Yeah, it's actually a pretty simple one. So I was at a large law firm for the better part of 10 years, Greenberg Traurig, so one of the largest law firms in the world, really good law firm. I just started to develop my own clients, about halfway through my career. And I had one who came to me and basically said, "Hey, I've been in this business with a partner. We've been together for about 10 years. And one day we've just decided we hate each other and don't want to continue to do this." But of course, when you have that dynamic, neither of them could agree on an amicable way to get out of the business. So he said, "I think we're going to have to go to litigation. Would you help out?" And I said, "Sure, but I don't think this is the way you want to go," right? I was very transparent with, this is probably going to cost a lot of money, take a lot of time. To make a very long story short, took on the case. The case lasted 3 years with me. And then I left Greenberg to go to Oracle. The case lasted an additional 3 years with my former boss after I left. It settled the morning of trial, right? So literally they were walking into the courtroom, stepped into a conference room on the side, and ended up settling the case for what I would say is, mid 5 figures. So not a substantial amount of money. And my former client called me. I wasn't his attorney anymore, but he just said, "It can't be like this. This cannot be how the system works." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Well, in 6 years, I've been going to court. Every single time they tell me to go to court, I show up," which had to be over 50 times over 6 years, right? He said, "At no point did anybody ask me what happened. What's the story? What's the deal between you and your ex-partner? Why did this go south? Who did what? What's the deal? How should this thing be resolved?" He goes, "How is that possible that in 6 years, it just gets to the point where it's so brutal?" He had spent $1.5 million in legal fees to settle a case for, think about it, $20,000, $30,000. And said, "I spent $1.5 million in legal fees, showed up to every court hearing. Nobody ever asked me what my story was, what the deal was." And for me, that was the aha moment, right? Which I said, he's right. Like, it isn't justice supposed to be about the story? Isn't it supposed to be about the litigants? Why isn't it? And why don't people get to tell their story? Why is this process just pushing paper back and forth for years and years and years? So that was my moment of like, this has to change. There's got to be a better way to do this.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that story. And, what I love about this even more is you haven't just sort of focused on the problem and done nothing. You focused on the problem and really tried to do something and brought that entrepreneurial flair out. So I guess moving into sort of new era ADR then, how is it different from established players in this space specifically, and why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, so if you look at the US litigation market, right, there's really two options. There's going to court, pretty standard thing to do. And then there's alternative dispute resolution, arbitration and mediation. There are two 600-pound gorillas, and I say that if they're listening in a positive way, in the United States in alternative dispute resolution, which is the American Arbitration Association and JAMS. They've both been around for a very long time. They own a vast percentage of the market, and they do what they do well, right? But for me, I just looked at it a very different way, which was, there's this world of technology, right? And the thing that really, really inspired me was telehealth, right? So everybody said, look, if you can do medical proceedings online, why can't you do legal proceedings online? It just seems like the stakes are a little bit lower in legal proceedings, even if it's money.
Yeah.
So I really thought, well, why can't we? Let's think about this in a number of ways. Let's try to model something after telehealth. Let's do it virtually. Let's do it with flat fees, which incentivizes everybody to do things as quickly as humanly possible. And let's see if we can get this stuff done more efficiently and in a much faster way. So I really come back to telehealth. People, I think, get sick of this analogy, but it really is what inspired me, because there was this big backlash against telehealth when it started, and people said, you can't do this. It just doesn't work. And I just thought, well, if they've gotten over that hurdle, then we can get over this hurdle. And so that's really been the goal, is to use technology to facilitate the process, make it fully virtual, and make it efficient and fast.
Well, that leads to exactly what I was going to go to next in terms of, you have blended innovation with access to justice, which is something we're very passionate about here on the Legally Speaking podcast in terms of tech for good. And so you have then gone out and, as you sort of touched on, then built sort of new era ADR around, and with that in mind, fairness, efficiency, transparency, and cost. So how have users responded to this reimagined process?
I think it's been great, right? I mean, if you think about, I think we always have to look at things, whether you're an individual, whether you're a business, whether you're an individual involved in a business, the chances are that you're not making money off of litigating cases, right? It's a distraction from whether you have to do personally. If you're a single mom and have 3 kids, do you have time to go to court? Do you have time to go to an arbitration? And if you're a business, chances are you're making widgets, you're providing services, whatever you're doing, it's not litigation. So what we can do is say, look, we're going to take up the most minimal time possible, which means you can log on from your computer, your phone, whatever it may be, and you can do whatever actually makes you money, or whatever you have in your personal life going on, and you can participate in this litigation process without it pulling lots of time and resources out of you. So I think that the reception to that has been extraordinarily positive. I think we now live in a world that's obviously very virtual. We're talking to each other across the pond. And people have embraced that, right? You don't want to get in the car, you don't want to get in a plane, you don't want to travel places you don't need to travel for things you don't want to do. So the reception's been really, really positive, and said, hey, you're giving me all this time back. And you're actually, you're giving me bandwidth back that I need to actually build the business in the way I want to build it.
And it's all of our greatest commodity, isn't it? Time. So I think if you can blend that with tech and as a really positive solution, which you obviously have, it's fantastic. Okay, there will be certain people watching this, and I say this a little bit tongue in cheek, where their wage is their cage. They want to get out, but for whatever reason, they're scared to make that journey. Maybe they are in big law. Maybe the hours of just getting too much, not getting much of family time, or whatever it is it may be. But what lessons did you learn from transitioning out of big law, and what advice would you give to lawyers that might be thinking about taking that similar leap into entrepreneurship or indeed sort of innovation?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a certain level of comfort, right? Let me address one thing first. I think there's been a lot of people who have said, and this ties into what you're saying, that have said, well, if you make things more efficient, aren't you killing the billable hour, and doesn't that limit the amount that people make? I actually look at it in a very different way, which is, right now, you have a certain dollar threshold of cases that you simply can't litigate because it doesn't make economic sense, right? Yeah. And that can be $500,000. It's not like, this isn't like $5,000, right? It can be a very significant number. And the reality is, if you could do those things more efficiently, then big law firms and attorneys and stuff could handle those cases. And all of a sudden you have more cases and you might be making more money. And lo and behold, it's efficiency that's done that. So I always like to say, we're not killing the billable hour. We're actually opening up the market for there to be additional litigation. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. What is a bad thing is the fact that those cases are getting thrown to the side and relationships are being ruined and things like that. So I wanted to say that because there is always this idea of like big law and billable hours and things like that. And are we antagonistic to it? We're not. Yeah. But when you think about the lifestyle thing, I think you really just have to decide. There's a lot of comfort in working at a big law firm. There's a lot of comfort in, I'm sure, working at smaller law firms, whatever it may be. You get a paycheck, you have, your benefits. And the question I think you need to decide is, does that outweigh stepping off the cliff, right? Because the one thing I will tell anybody who's entrepreneurial and has that feeling, this is incredibly difficult. So no matter how many times you hear it's hard, it is 10 times harder than even what you hear. So I think what you just have to decide is, do I have the gumption? Do I have the stick-to-itness, whatever you want to call it, to fight through those times? And if you do, then I would encourage you to do it. if you're really afraid of what that looks like and you're afraid of putting in the hours and the effort and all the pain and misery that comes with it, then that's cool. You're probably better off just staying with what you do. And there's neither way is the right path, right? It's not. So I think you just have to decide, really, do I have the guts to step? It's leaping off a cliff. And you don't know what's going to happen. And if you're comfortable with that, I say go for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a very much sort of go for it person if you can get yourself into that headspace. Okay, so on the flip side of that, then, in your experience, what are the biggest obstacles to innovation and change within the legal industry, and how can lawyers think about overcoming them?
Yeah, I think, I mean, look, this is the most entrenched industry I think you can possibly find. And I don't say that as a negative or a positive. I just say, when you think about how long the law has existed, just ponder that for a second. So I think people get into their practices, their procedures, their methods, whatever it may be, and they're comfortable, right? And once again, I'm always going to come back to that word comfort, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think you also have to, and I think that's going to be probably the biggest thing that's always going to be difficult in the legal industry to change, right?
Yeah.
You're always going to have people who are just comfortable making large salaries and whatever it may be, and not thinking about what's the best way to actually do this. So what I would say to people who look that way, who pays the bills? Clients pay the bills.
Yeah.
And we have now entered a world where clients are looking for solutions and not invoices. So it used to be, when you had, under $1,000 billing rates, that you would have a case and pass it on to your attorney and say, look, I know they're going to bill me for this, and it is what it is, and you guys handle it and let me know when you need stuff from me. Now you're hitting a realm where that first invoice could be an astronomical sum. So you're starting to go to your attorneys and say, and I know this because I was a client, right? You're starting to go to those attorneys and say, look, I need solutions. I don't just need billable hours. So I think everybody has to look at it from that magnifying glass at this point, which is people are no longer just looking to say, I'm going to pass off my stuff to an attorney and say, let me know when it's over. Instead, they're saying, how do you get me out of this? Like, that's what I'm looking for out of you. How do you get me out of this? How do you get me to an end game? And so I think that can be what transforms sort of that entrenched position, is that the clients are the ones who are going to say, enough, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, no, and the more client-centered you can be, the more successful you'll ultimately
Exactly.
be. Okay, so let's build from there then, in terms of this balancing of tradition versus transformation, because we're still quite early into this AI revolution world, this next tech generation revolution that's going on, and many legal professionals struggle with actually balancing the traditional and the demand for tech advancement. As you say, they're not just looking for invoices, they're looking for solutions. So I guess coming with that then, how do lawyers both kind of think about that, but do it in terms of not losing trust and credibility, two very big pieces when it comes to lawyering?
Yeah, I think if you look at it from our perspective, people have asked us, why don't you just make an AI judge, right? You got the platform. Why don't you just feed all the information in an algorithm? The algorithm spits out a decision, and lo and behold, genius! It's perfect. You finished the case, and it happened like that. There's a problem with that, which is that there's no human element, right? So I think when you look at what AI and all these different and technology brings to the table, I think it creates great efficiency in the process. And that's fantastic. That makes everything move quicker. It makes everybody's life easier. But at the end of the day, we still give you a human to talk to. You have a hearing and you actually talk to that person and say, remember my original story? Here's what happened to me. This is what happened. And that human listens and makes a decision based on what they're told. Now, they may have taken everything and had it summarized by AI up to that point, so they have a good idea what's going on, and that may have saved them a ton of hours in getting to that point. But at that hearing point, they're actually sitting and listening to you. So I think when you think of this concept of technology is good, I believe technology is good, and it's continue to facilitate things. But when you mash it with a human element, you really get a great outcome, because then that person can say, I don't really care what made all this efficient. I care that somebody listened to me. And if they ruled against me, I can ask them why. And I can't just point to an algorithm and say, well, the algorithm said you were wrong. That's not a good outcome, right? It's not a good outcome to be able to tell somebody, I don't know why you lost. The algorithm said you lost. We still live in a world where I think people want that human element. So I think combining the two things is really the best of both worlds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You want cohesion, don't you? You want fusion rather than confusion, and you want credibility. And if you can collaborate well and tech used well with human inputs, is brilliant to see. Let's talk about then diversity, because how important is diversity both in people and thought when actually building a legal tech company or assembling a panel of arbitrators or mediators?
I think, I strongly believe you get the best decisions, you get the best products when you have a population, whether or not it's within your company, whether or not it's arbitrators and mediators, that looks like the population in general.
Mm.
So I think when you have when you have a demographic that's very unified, that's not the right word, uniform. When you have a demographic that's very uniform, you're going to get very uniform decisions, right? And I think we live in a world where everything is moving so quickly,
Yeah.
that you need diversity of thought. You need people who have experienced the world the way that it is today and aren't necessarily, and I hate to say this, but as you get into a demographic that's older, that doesn't necessarily use all the technology that's involved, you're probably going to get decisions that are a little bit skewed because they don't necessarily understand what the technology does or why it did it one way or not. And that's what concerns me is I think you can get great decisions when you say, look, my population of either employees or arbitrators looks like the population in general. I think that's incredibly important that people understand the way that world works and see it from different views. Because once again, if you get one uniform demographic, I think you're going to have a lot of problems.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And I think you articulated that very, very well. And thanks for sharing with that. And let's look in the future then. Let's look at the future of legal tech and ADR
Mhm.
and what that might look like. How do you see the relationship between law firms and legal tech companies evolving over the coming years?
Really good question. I mean, I think law firms have now really opened their eyes to what this can do.
Yeah,
And let's go to the idea that AI and technology is going to replace humans. I don't believe that as long as you have an integral piece of the party, right? As
yeah,
long as you're bringing value, you're not going to get replaced. Here's the other thing about AI. AI doesn't think. It collates information. The biggest misconception about AI is that it is off like pondering all the stuff that you put into it. No, it's really, really good at taking all the inputs and then spitting out some sort of decision. And that's also the reality is like if you put in bad inputs, you get bad decisions.
yeah,
So this isn't the concept of AI and like taking jobs and stuff. This is not some, omnipotent thing that's thinking for you. You still need humans. And so I think when you look at law firms, the ability to take technology and make everything more efficient and give better outcomes to clients while still maintaining whatever your bill rates are, that is right there. It's right there for everybody to have. And here's the reality. You may spend way less time on one case, but if that client thinks that you gave them a solution and were efficient, they're probably going to give you 20 more cases that you wouldn't have gotten, right? And what's more exciting, handling one case or handling 20, more interesting cases? So I think law firms are now realizing this. I think people are becoming a little bit less fearful that, all this technology is going to take their jobs and realizing it's enhancing your job and it's making better outcomes for your clients. And I think that's going to be a really good symbiotic relationship going into the future, I hope. And I think law firms that don't adopt that will probably disappear. And that's just sort of, I guess, economic Darwinism.
yeah. No, and I think sometimes we have to be a little bit to the point with where the puck is going and where the trends are going. And so what key trends or signals should lawyers be paying attention to right now to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to go to conferences. You need to be involved in legal tech. You need to read. You need to figure this stuff out. You can't bury your head in the sand. I think there probably is, a population that says, "I've done it this way for this long, and I'm good. I don't need to learn." That's great. Dinosaurs died out too, right? So if you want to take that position, that's probably what's going to happen to you. So I think it really is, everything is moving so quickly that you need to get yourself educated. You need to go to conferences. You need to listen to CLEs. You need to listen to podcasts where people are talking about this stuff. So you have an idea of what's going on. Because if you're not doing that, you're going to get left behind. And if you say, I don't need to do that because I'm comfortable, you're going to get extincted. I don't know. You're going to go the
Yeah.
way of the dinosaur. So I think it really is, you have to you have to be self-motivated and educate yourself and make sure that you know what's going on in the world.
I couldn't agree more. And I've attended a lot of conferences recently, particularly Clio's cloud conference in Boston just earlier in October. Fantastic. And the amount of knowledge you pick up and wisdom, and not just obviously from being on stages, but when you actually network and meet with people on the ground that are running businesses, that are talking about challenges, problems they're trying to solve, you pick up so many little nuggets of wisdom. For you then, as an entrepreneur, can you share where taking risk or maybe making a bold career move actually paid off, and what lessons others could learn from that experience?
How's this one? I'll give you an example of when taking a risk didn't pay off.
Go for it. I like it.
I can give you two. So I was the general counsel of two technology startups in Chicago. The first one was run by some very young entrepreneurs, very, very, very smart people who had never really done anything else. So they had started this business and were very convinced that they knew how to run a business, even though they were, in their mid-20s. It went so south, I can't even explain it to you. There's been prison sentences involved and all sorts of things like that. I was a federal witness against my former employers. It was astonishingly how bad this went. And I had left Oracle, which is one of the most established tech companies in the world, for this job. And lo and behold, it just completely cratered. So I guess the lesson from that is that my next job, the next job I took, I actually left the company before it cratered. And I took a job from an entrepreneur in Chicago who had started, 3 businesses, been super successful, knew what he was doing. And so for me, the lesson was, look, it's great to be smart. It's great to have the entrepreneurial spirit. It's great to really want to push ahead. It is not great to lie. It is not great to create things that don't exist. And the fake it till you make it mantra is a load of horse shit. That is how you get in trouble, right? You have to have substance. You cannot just fake it until you make it. And so for me, the learning experience was, all right, if I'm going to jump off of something that's very, very comfortable and safe, I want to jump off into it with somebody who really, really knows what they're doing. And that was my second experience. He knew it. He was so transparent. Everybody knew what was going on in the company. David, I hope you listen. And he taught me how to run a business. He taught me how to do things the right way. And so that's what I would say is, look, if you're going to jump off that cliff and it's not you running it, if you're jumping off with somebody, make sure that somebody in that crew knows what's going on and has some experience doing it. Because I don't want to say that's the safe way to do it. That's the smart way to do it. And I hate the phrase "fake it till you make it." I hate it. And if nobody's paying attention, it doesn't work anymore. Look at how everybody's going to prison because of this. So don't ever take that mantra. Don't believe in it. Don't believe in the Silicon Valley theory of it's fine. We'll figure it out later on. No, you won't. So I think dealing with somebody who's got experience and can teach you things is a really important thing.
Yeah, and being humble to that as well, and accepting that actually you want to come as you have all the skills and experience yourself, but you still come as a student and actually want to kind of be developed to learn and be around credible people and just be inspired. I love that. Okay, before I let you go, if you could change one thing about the legal industry overnight, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good question. I think when you look at, and I've touched on this, when you look at worlds that are entrenched, right? And my brother's a doctor, and I mentioned telehealth. You look at the medical industry and the legal industry and how slow they are to change. That's what I would change, right? Like, let's open our eyes. The world is an amazing place. The technology that's being created does amazing things. Let's get out of the world where we're all entrenched in what we've done for so many years, and look at how we can do things differently and how we can do things better. I would also say, flat fees and alternative fee arrangements are a really, really good thing. And the world of the billable hour, I know it's existed forever and people love it and it does certain things for them. But the reality is, I think we've moved to a different state, right? And I actually think there's a law firm in Chicago called Bartlett Beck, which has been doing flat fees for 25 years. They make more money. And I remember talking to some of their attorneys and they said, well, we thought we had 5 years of doing it this way before everybody changed. And I do wish that would change, because I think using technology, incenting efficiency, and breaking out of sort of traditional ways of doing things would be the best thing that could happen in the legal industry.
Yeah, and ultimately, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And we are in
Exactly.
this,
Yeah.
we are in this age of innovation where, but whether you're on the bus or not, things are going to continue to innovate, move quickly, and you do need to, like you say, get educated, be around people, go and get information from conferences, podcasts, whatever it may be. And yeah, I've just really enjoyed this inspiring, forward-looking, forward-thinking conversation. I think you reminded all of us that innovation and law isn't about actually replacing people, and you've been very clear about that. It's actually about empowering them. And the technology that you're producing is obviously making justice far faster, fairer, more human. And I'm just really impressed how you're sort of reimagining. Don't think that's the
I
right
don't know.
word.
I keep
Reimagining.
using words that don't exist.
Reimagining might be a slightly better word. How things could and should be done. And so with that, if people want to know more about New Era ADR, where do they need to go? Feel free to shout out any websites, any contact details, and we'll also share them for you too.
Sure. It's just neweraadr.com is the website. You can contact me directly if you want. I'm happy to talk anytime. Collin at neweraadr.com, 2 L's. I am kind of unique in that most people are Collin with 1 L, but I'm with 2. So yeah, I'm happy to chat anytime. If people have problems, they want to learn more about starting their own businesses, happy to talk about any of that stuff.
There we go. And feel free to connect with Collin on LinkedIn as well, I'm sure. And yeah,
Please
thank
do.
you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. And congratulations on what you've been building and what you're doing and what you're working on. We're big fans over here on the Legally Speaking podcast, sponsored by Clio. So thanks for your time. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. And until next time, folks, keep innovating, keep evolving, keep believing justice can be reimagined, and stay curious. But for now, from all of us, over and out.